96%. Yeah, should be good.
All right. So I'm recording. This is recording to the cloud. That way, I'll be able to then move it from there to our Google Drive, and then inevitably to Anchor.
Yeah.
So we're looking pretty good.
Right.
All right. So we'll get rocking. Obviously, Greg, as you know, this is our first time, so we appreciate you hopping on with us. Alex,
yeah, it's a pleasure to be involved.
Thought of this. Of course. So Alex obviously brought this to my attention. Personally, I thought it was a fantastic idea for you to be our first guest. Just a general conversation, not only about shared experiences on the field as all three of us being USL players, but kind of diving a little deeper into the psychology behind it, the ups and downs of what it's like to be a professional footballer. When things are going great, obviously it's everybody is envious, right, of you as for what we do as a living, and then we also have to deal with the other side of it. Just give us a little background about yourself, about your experiences thus far, and we'll get into it.
So, like I said, Greg Hurst, from Scotland. I started playing from the age of 6, probably, with a local team. Back home, signed for a professional SPL club when I was 13. Just as it was kind of part time, just kind of trying to get into the professional scene. Obviously, still at school, so training 3 nights a week. Things didn't work out there. Typical Scottish one, where I was too small, wasn't big enough, wasn't athletic enough. So straight from the off, you have that little setback. But I think it's a good thing, because straight away, you're 2 years into a career at the age of 14, and you're already getting told no to a certain extent. So I think it kind of helps character from an early age. So I kind of took a step back, joined another semi-professional local team called Stirling Albion when I was 14. Played there for 3 or 4 years. Really enjoyed my time there. That was more reserve football at that age. I was starting to play maybe 2 or 3 age groups above. Competing with more physically developed players, which helped me tenfold, because I kind of had to adapt to not being able just to run past everybody, or be able to hold my own. So that kind of accelerated my development, I'd say. And then was lucky enough to get scouted when I was 17. Went on trial at Everton in the Premier League for their under-18s and their reserve side, and I was there for about a month, and it was probably still the best experience I've had as a professional footballer so far, just in terms of the quality of the football, the quality of the facilities. It was at a time where players like Lukaku, Tom Davies, they were all at the club, and walking past these players every day, it's something that I'll never forget. Just being in that Premier League environment. The trial went really well, but at the end of it, they just said that at the age I was at, I hadn't been playing like week in, week out long enough to be at the level that they needed me to be at. So you'd show how good you were one day, and then the other day it would kind of, you'd be back down here. It just wasn't the consistency that they have with the players that they've got that have been in their academy since they were 4 and 5 years old. So again, almost another setback, but I thought, that's kind of, for what people say, that's one of the best leagues in the world, and to kind of even have the experience of being a reserve player there for a month was something I'll never forget. Like I said, going on a pre-season trip with them to Ireland as well, and just being around players that are top class footballers. Like I said, getting to train on the same pitches next to someone like Lukaku, who's one of the best strikers in the world right now. Came back up the road, back to Scotland, and signed for St Johnstone when I was 18, and had 3 or 4 really enjoyable years there. Great group of people, great lads, done really well. I think I made my debut after about 3 months. And you kind of get that first taste of being a professional footballer, and I think ever since then it kind of really sunk in that that's what I want to do. It was just such a great experience. You're only in the park for 10 minutes in your debut, but that 10 minutes, you never forget it. So it was an unbelievable experience again. Players that you watch when you're growing up, and you aspire to play with them and be like them, and all of a sudden you're in the same dressing room as them, you're on the same coach as them. So that was great. Progressed through St Johnstone, got a first team contract, 2 or 3 years there. Kind of always on the fringes of getting into the first team, but had numerous loan spells just to get game time, because they had a strong squad at that time, especially in the position that I was looking to play, out on the left or up front. They had a lot of experience, a lot of good players that had played at an even higher level. So it was a difficult time for me to break through. So I was getting loaned out to League One, League Two clubs just to kind of get game time every week. I think one thing that they done well was they didn't force any minutes onto the loan contract. So I had to go there and I had to earn the right to play. Just because I was coming on loan from the top flight club didn't mean that I was just going to walk into the team. So even at that age, 18, 19, you're already competing. And it's a little bit more different because you're getting loaned to part-time teams. So you only train with them on a Tuesday, Thursday. You're also training with your full-time club during the week. You play your reserve games with the full-time club on the Tuesday if you're not got training, or even the Thursday, and then you've got the game on the Saturday as well. So for 2.5, 3 seasons, for the best part of that, I was playing 2 to 3 games a week. And you start to feel the demands of professional football at that point. It's like 90 minutes on a Saturday, maybe 75 minutes for the reserves on the Tuesday, minimal recovery, then you're back again on the Saturday. And it's just, it starts to take a toll on your body, and you start to get tired really easily. But once you start getting used to it, it obviously becomes a lot easier. And all the travelling as well. I was living in Stirling and went on loan to Berwick Rangers, which is in the border. It's technically in England, so it's a 2.5 hour car journey on a Thursday night to go to training, 2.5 hours on a Saturday to get to the game. Driving myself as well, you get bored. Some nights it's cold on a Thursday and you just don't want to really be there. But I suppose it's part of being the professional footballer. You have to. That's what you signed up for. Eventually, it got to the point at St Johnstone where the assistant manager left, and he was someone that I really got on well with. He always wanted me to be involved in the team. He left, and after that, I could see things starting to go downhill in terms of not really being in the future plans. I remember going back for pre-season in one of my last years. Every session I was starting left wing for the first team for the games, and the team shaping and stuff. Got to the first game, the first friendly, wasn't involved, and I just at that point I was kind of like, what was all that? I've had 6 weeks of pre-season getting prepared to get to the stage where I'm at. Finally think that I'm going to be, one of the main players in the team. Think I'm going to get my chance to starting games and really like make a stamp on my career as well. And just that just gets taken away in the blink of an eye. So again, it's another setback. And from then on, I was a bit disappointed. Probably struggled to get my head around why that had happened. And from there, I stopped enjoying. I stopped enjoying going to training, going to play games. Eventually, I got put out on another loan spell back to a club I'd already been at, and I felt like I was almost going backwards. And it got to the point where I was just thinking, well, I've put in all this work for so many years. I'm only 21, but I don't feel like I'm really going anywhere. And it did get to the point where I was debating whether, football was it worth sticking it out for another couple of seasons to maybe go down the same path of getting loaned out, or did I need a fresh start? So it got to the point where me and the manager had a discussion, and we agreed that that wasn't the right place for me at that time. So we agreed for me to get released. I took about a month off and just thought, like what's the best option for me. Considered getting a job, maybe going back to university, or starting a college degree or something. And then the phone rang, and my agent said that there was a part-time team, 30 minutes down the road, that just wanted to bring me in. I knew of the manager before. He seemed like a really good guy. He called me in to just have a chat with him, and he just said, look, part-time, there's no pressure on you here, just come and enjoy your football. And I said to him, that's one thing that I want to do again. I just want to enjoy playing. I feel like the last maybe 2 years, I felt there was so much pressure that I almost forgot to enjoy playing football. And that's the main reason everybody plays it, is because you want to enjoy it. And you play your best when you're enjoying it as well. So I had a good chat with him, and he said, look, just come in, no pressure, get your confidence back. You know you're going to play every week for this team. And from there, I enjoyed it so much. It was just so refreshing to kind of go into an atmosphere. Again, it was part-time, so you've got boys coming in from training who have just finished a 9-to-5 job, or boys that didn't have jobs and that was their only thing that they had during the week. And it was just that whole dressing room experience. It's something that I know when I stop playing football, that's probably the main thing I'll miss. I think if you ask everybody, the best part about football is, being around the boys all the time. Which can also be a bad thing to a certain extent. Back home, it is a different atmosphere. I think it's a lot more cutthroat at times. Again, though, I think that's something that's probably helped me in the long run in terms of builds character. You can't be nervous going into dressing rooms. Obviously nobody likes somebody walking in and thinking that they already own the place, but people get a bit put off by someone who goes in and doesn't really make an attempt to mingle with anyone, or try and build a rapport with the players. And it's hard to find that balance, because you're going into a dressing room with 24 grown men, and I was 17 at the time, especially at my first full-time club. And these are players that I've seen play on the television, and I'm expected just to go in as if it's normal. And it takes a while to get used to that. There's a lot of banter that you're not used to, you're not exposed to as a 17-year-old very often. So you have to grow up quickly. But like I said, went part-time for 3 months just to finish the season, and straight away I started loving football again. But in the back of my mind, I still knew I needed a fresh start. And then luckily enough, one of the boys at the team knew our ex-assistant manager at the Red Bulls last year, who was looking for players. And the boy said that, I fitted the description of exactly what he wanted. And there was an opportunity to go to America and play. And, I don't think there's many more fresh starts, like maybe traveling into a different continent to kind of by yourself to go and revive your career. And there was, outside of the soccer things, there were just so many things that attracted me to come over here. A different lifestyle, meet different people, expand myself as a person as well. I've been someone who lived at home until I was 21, 22, and you want to I wanted to grow out of that and go and experience living on my own, dealing with problems myself, dealing with different challenges. And I don't think it really sank in until I was actually on the flight from Amsterdam to Atlanta, and I was sitting on the flight by myself, just like, okay, this is really it now. This is a start of something new. And I was so excited at the same time, but I was also really nervous because I'd never done anything like that before. So it was definitely a bit of a shock. The first few weeks, I wouldn't say it was difficult, but just the whole, you've got so many aspects that are different. You've got the weather, you've got the culture, the lifestyle, even the living situation. I'm not used to staying in apartments, and all of a sudden I was in an apartment with a guy that I've never met before, who was Spanish as well. So, but thankfully got on with him straight away. And then I think my first night met Alex and Stephen, obviously the captain, and just got on with those guys straight away. And I felt like almost I was at home already. And I think that's important if anybody was to, not just from the UK to America, but America to the UK, is if you find somebody early doors that you connect with, just bounce ideas off them, just stay connected with them, because it helps you settle in so much quicker. And I went to training the next day knowing that, I had 2 or 3 guys already that I got on with. So that kind of settles you down, it calms you down, and lets you do what you came to do, and that's to play soccer. So, and honestly, since I came here, I've never really looked back. I think it's definitely the best decision I've made so far, in terms of not just soccer wise, but for me personally as well, as to grow as a person. And I think that's why I'm enjoying my football so much right now, is because I can see myself changing as a person, and I'm going in a direction that I maybe didn't think I would, and I probably wouldn't have went if I stayed at home and tried to battle out, trying to get contracts back home, somewhere that I wasn't really enjoying being. And yeah, I'm delighted that I'm here just now.
I think a big part of what you said is like the connections, and you came in, that helped you settle in right away.
Yeah.
And you felt like you already had a little bit of home here.
Yeah.
I think that the more you can create that, and you've obviously been in enough different locker rooms at that point where you kind of started to understand the different dynamics between players. I mean, I can imagine walking through the halls and at Everton, as a teenager, was a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to create those connections with players at that point. But finding those ways to, when you get thrust into a new environment, I think that goes over massively.
Yeah.
In just settling in. And like you said, you've done quite well with that here.
I think in terms of culture wise, this is definitely the most difficult locker room to feel a part of, because it's not usual back home that you've got players from 5 or 6 different nationalities, and if they are, they're all from the UK, so they're all similar in a certain way. Yeah. But you come in, you've got boys from Brazil, Argentina, obviously you've got Beats and Amo. Yeah. Obviously you've got the American kids. Yeah, so it's a lot different, but again, it's something that helps some, especially I was 21 when I came across, seeing these different cultures and getting on with them well. There was a lot of the boys last year that I got on really well with, but you wouldn't really put a Scottish and an Argentinian together as what you'd expect to have a good friendship, and straight away, I clicked with a lot of the boys. So that was definitely something that was difficult, but when you see that it's easy and it just kind of happens, because at the end of the day, we're all there to play football. So you all have that thing in common straight away. Whatever goes on outside the football, that can be different, but every day you're at training and you're in the locker room, you're all there for the same purpose. So straight away you have that connection, and I think that just makes it a whole lot easier.
I think I can kind of relate that to as well, obviously with the clubs I've played at, but even just with me and Cody wanting to start this project, Cody, I don't think we'd actually like formally met before until we just chatted on the phone a few times. We played against each other once or twice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just we were
able
to
man.
build that connection pretty easily.
Yeah, and look, we share, or we speak the same language at the end of the day. Obviously, we're 2 goalkeepers, so we're the strange ones. So Greg, welcome.
I agree with that.
Yeah, we fit in all right.
One thing that you did say, Greg, that I'd like to just hear you expand upon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Cody, yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. We have connection difficulties.
We're back. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a bit of delay. It's still recording.
Okay.
Greg, one of the things that the takeaway thus far, and I'd like just to kind of get your perspective on things, because it's probably something that as the general population, they seek comfort and they seek security. With the amount of times that you went out on loan, right? The uncertainty. How do you mentally deal with the unknown of, you know, the club that I'm with is putting me out on loan. You're almost like a habitual loanee, if you will. One season to the next, right? What mentally, what does that do? Because in my conversations with my peers, that maybe have what we'll call it a regular job, a regular 9 to 5, that when I explain to them about how contracts work and you know, the uncertainty of 1 year to the next, it's like a foreign concept to most of the population. So if you just kind of expand on what that does to you mentally, while all having to, you know, be in a career that you get judged on your performance. So you're having all these things thrown at you. You're obviously unsettled. I think it would be important for people that do listen to this, to understand the reality of it from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, I think you've got so many voices in your head at that time. Some positive, some negative. You know, sometimes I was on my third loan spell and I'm thinking, you know, why am I still getting loaned out? Other side of it was I was still pretty young at the time, so I had that kind of carefree confidence that no, it's going to work out. Like everything's going to be fine, because I was performing well, and that's one thing that, you know, like you said, you have to be, no matter what's going on outside the football or in your head, nobody knows that. So you're going to still be judged on how you perform. It's not really a business, or certainly wasn't a business where you get the arm around the shoulder every time you have a bad game, because people almost forget that, you know, outside the football, everybody has a lives, everybody's got things to deal with. So I think it can start to weigh heavily down on you, and you can start to get inside your own head and start worrying about, I've only got 6 months left of my contract, I'm still on loan, I'm struggling to deal with all the pressure that might be on me just now, and that's why I'm not performing. And, you know, as like a 19, 20-year-old, you're not really in a position to just go, like, I don't think I can handle this right now. You know, it's like one of those things where you feel like you have to just fight through it. Okay, maybe that's just a part of being a professional football player. And it is to a certain extent, but it can get to the point where, you know, it maybe gets too much for someone at 19 or 20 years old to have that constant pressure. And that was one reason why, you know, I thought long and hard about maybe stepping away from football, whether it was to go and pursue something else or maybe it was just short term, because I felt like my outside life from football was starting to get affected by it, and that's something that, you know, I didn't really want to happen. You know, I didn't want my parents worrying about me or my brother worrying about me because of things that were going on in football, because football was always the one place where I was always happy, and I feel like they would know if there was something wrong. The worrying thing for them would have been, well, if he's not happy when he's playing football, then where is he going to be happy? Because that was all I've done as a kid. You know, that was the escape from everything, whether it was big or small. So yeah, when you start getting to the stage where you see boys your age maybe starting to start a lot more for the first team, or moving on to clubs that are in the same division, not going out on loan, getting transferred, you do start doubting yourself a little bit, and then you start doubting your ability, which is probably the worst thing you can do. You know, like players that are in that at that standard at that age, they're there for a reason. You know, so you obviously are good enough to be there. It's just who can, you know, almost fight the demons long enough to battle through the ups and downs, because nobody's football career is going to be plain sailing. Everybody has their ups, everybody has their downs, and more often than not, the downs are a lot lower than the ups. You know, you think about the most I've been affected in football, I've had great memories in terms of like games, performances, experiences, but the ones I do remember are when I felt at my worst. They'll stick with you for a lot longer. So I think it's for people who, like we say, have the regular 9 to 5 jobs. Of course, they have pressures. They have, you know, maybe they lack security in their job as well. I think the slight difference in football is you almost have it from the day you walk in the door. You know, just because you signed a 1-year contract doesn't mean you're going to be there for the full year. There's nothing stopping the club turning around and just going, it's maybe not the best if you're still here beyond the year, or even halfway through the season. They can turn around and go, you're not quite cutting it, we don't see you progressing here, and that can be it. You know, like people think, oh, okay, he signed a 2-3 year deal, he's secure for that. That's still doesn't mean you're going to be at the club for 2 or 3 years. You still have to perform day in, day out. And you know, at the end of the day, which is one thing that people find strange as well, is it's one man's opinion if you're good enough or not, because he's the man who's in charge of the club. He picks the team. He decides who or when you're training. That was one thing when I started. I turned 20, 21, and I was training with under 18s every other day. So I was kind of like, that's when I was thinking to myself, okay, so there is a problem here. And I was speaking to players at the time, and they didn't think it was a performance thing. They just thought maybe it could be a test. Like, how do you react to being put to the reserve squad or the under 18s? Like, what is your reaction? Are you going to just go down there and moan about it, or are you going to keep performing and prove that you're supposed to be back in the first team? And everybody's different, so those kind of situations will be different for different players. And you've seen it, some players just go down and it's fine. They're not really that bothered about it, keep performing, work their way back into the first team. And then some players it will affect quite heavily. And they just get to the point where you can go all the way. I was played with a boy who, technically one of the best players I've played with, especially at that age, and he's not kicked a ball in 5 years because he just didn't think that the pressure he felt day in, day out was worth continuing. And it's sad to see, because you think about how many players all over the world will be in that situation that could have been great players but just didn't or weren't able to cope with possibly the mental side of the game, which I don't think, from the outside looking in, people don't understand that every day is a mental battle. Even a bad training session can affect people massively. A bad game, after the game, the coach goes, gets a little bit angry at you, maybe calls your name out in front of the whole team. Some players react to that better. The next week they're going to be the best player in the park. Some players maybe, hide in their shell. And it's worked for me in both ways. Sometimes, managers after games I've not had a great game, and they've kind of called me out in front of players, and the whole week after that at training, I've done really well. Next game, played really well. And then I've also been on the other side where for 3 or 4 days I really just don't want to be there, and it does affect you. And I think the constant up and down is something, because you don't really have real consistency. It is a performance-based industry, and if you're not performing week in, week out, day in, day out, then you don't have that security. I think as well, even if you are one of the performers who consistently you can rely on them to give you 8 and 9 out of 10 performances every week or every day in training, you're one bad injury away from never playing again. And that's one thing that I think is always in the back of every player's mind, that you could be the best player in the world, but one tackle or one bad decision could stop you from playing for the rest of your career.
There's definitely a lot that goes into it, and I think it's a bit of a skewed view from a general public's perspective, because they see the Ronaldos, they see the Messis, right? They see the fast cars, the great vacations, the upper echelon of football. Not understanding that most football in the world is lower league football, and these realities that we deal with as human beings. It doesn't matter the turmoil that's going on, say, in your personal life, or within your own mind. You're expected to put that to the side, bury it, so you can perform on the match day. How do you look at? Just curious, because I've struggled with this, and I speaking for myself, but I bet Alex could kind of identify with this as well. Football is what I do, but it's not who I am. how do you view that statement? Because it's in theory. I try to practice it, and I try to have other interests, other places where I can push my energy towards. That way, I'm not so reliant on, oh, I played well this week, I'm going to be in a great mood, or oh, I played shit this week, and everybody's against me. So you notice that over time, and that's something personally that I looked at and I said, I don't know if I necessarily want to go down that path, because with what we do, it's a front-loaded career path, right? We're going to be people much longer than we're going to be footballers, but it's inevitable that our habits are what got us to this point, right? So eating correctly, getting the proper sleep, kind of looking at things in a perspective of what I want most versus what I'd like now. So being able to sacrifice parties or get-togethers with friends. How do you kind of view that mentality, and do you struggle with that at all?
I think it's a very it's a very personal idea. I think it's different in every other player. You have some players that if they have a bad game on a Saturday, they're not going to be happy till they have a good game the next Saturday. And that's something that personally I don't think I could. I try and avoid that because I know outside the football that's going to affect my mood massively, and I don't want to bring down the people I'm around outside the football because I didn't perform well or we got beat. It's difficult to get over a defeat. We had the game the other weekend against Tormenta. We get beat 2-1, concede 2 goals within 10 minutes, and we lost at home. And you could tell everybody was just so dejected. Everybody was almost upset with the result.
It affected the week of training.
Yeah.
At least like a day or two post.
Back in on the Monday, Tuesday, and you could tell that everybody was just kind of a bit just deflated, which can be expected, but also right now we've got a fairly young team in terms of experience, so you have to expect that they're not used to maybe having these moments where you're cruising 1-0 up, 10 minutes later you're getting beat 2-1, and you're sitting in the locker room 15 minutes later like, how did that happen? It is difficult to get over, but obviously I think it comes with experience of being in these situations. I'm only 23 just now, but because of the numerous loan spells I've had, because I played so young, I've had experience of winning and losing. And as great as winning is, you have to look at the losses and the defeats because they're the hard ones to get over. So I think, like I said, I don't think I try to stay away from a bad performance or a bad result defines my week, because I don't think it's healthy for me as a person. Some people can be different. That's why I was saying it's such a personal idea, because everybody wants to win, and when you win, you can tell in the locker room after, everybody's delighted. The training the next week is always that little bit better. And I've heard managers say like, no laughing on the bus after a defeat, no music, no nothing, and I get that to a certain point, but at the same time, after a period of time passes, you have to move on. You can't just live in that moment where you've been beat, because nobody likes that feeling. It's probably the worst feeling I get. It's when you get beat or if you have a bad game. If you keep living in that moment, then I feel for me that's just going to carry on to training. I'm going to be poor in training. I'm going to have a poor game the next game. So I kind of brush it off as quickly as I can. Obviously you have to review your game and see where you went wrong, because that's how you get better as a player, but you can't. I try not to just get stuck in that rut of being down after a game. It's the same when you win as well. Everybody loves the feeling. You want to win all the time, but you can't then take that into the next game and be, well, we won last week, so we're just going to win this week. It's important to kind of bring yourself back to earth almost, and just make sure that you're, as hard as it is, but just try to keep a balanced mentality in terms of don't ever get too down, but don't ever get too up either.
I think there's a difference to, at least with my career and my experiences. I mean, until I was a professional at age 22, 23 after college, there was always a natural divide for me. I was playing soccer and I was going to school.
Yeah.
So I had, you know, a release in that side. You know, I had to focus on my studies. I had, you know, my school friends, then we would go do things together. And then, you know, I was also sacrificing a ton of time to football. And I think that, you know, once I became a professional, it took me a couple of years to understand kind of what Cody was saying, because I felt it to myself of, you know, football is what I do, not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I had trouble, I guess, separating the two.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the way the sport is overseas, and you know how your career's gone, you were thrust into it at an early age.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've had more experience than probably even, I mean, myself, dealing with that, even though we've got a bit of an age gap. I just think it's something that culturally is different on both sides, but either way, we still have to deal with it, you know, in our own ways.
I think as well, you know, that is the difference between back home and over here, is a lot of the professionals come through at 21, 22 here because they have to finish their college degrees first or go through college. Whereas back home, I got the opportunity to leave school, you know, early. But it's something that my mum and dad always said was, you, no matter what, you'll finish school first, because it is so important. It goes back to what we said earlier, you know, you're one bad tackle away from never kicking a ball again. You have to have a plan B. You know, I think how small a percentage of the players that will make it to the stage where they can retire on the money they make. Everybody has to have a fallback plan. I think going back to, you know, football's what you do, not who you are. I'd say it's different in my case because I was a lot younger when I got put into that environment. You know, it's all I knew. Even at school, I wasn't really interested. As much as I tried to stick in as much as I could, every day I just wanted to go and play football. Every day of school was another day closer to hopefully, you know, getting a professional contract. And then once you're in that situation, you realise pretty quickly it's not what it looks like on the TV, because you're used to seeing, like you said, the upper echelon of the players, the ones who are on millions of pounds a year. They can afford the nice houses, the nice cars. They've built up to that, and they went through everything that you're going to go through. But that also doesn't mean that you're going to get to the level that they'll be at. You know, it's a lot, like you said, a lot of the professional players do play at a lower level, and you're not going to get the rewards that the top teams will get and the top players will get. So, but going back to the point, I think I was always kind of, football as defines me. You know, when I was younger, I used to take defeats and bad performances really badly because I thought, okay, that means that maybe I'm not good enough. That's where I'd go straight away. I wouldn't think, oh, it's just one bad game. You know, I've had 3 good games previous. For me, that one bad game was like the standout, and I'd straight away start to panic and be like, okay, maybe I won't make it even at this level. I think that's something that I had to kind of develop quickly, to try and block out. You know, everybody, we're all human. We're not machines. We're going to make mistakes. You're going to have bad games. Things that build up through the week, whether it's injuries or something outside of football, there's so many things that can affect it. And that was one thing I tried to, you know, build a mental strength against, the fact that just because I have one bad game doesn't mean I'm not good enough. But just because I have a good game doesn't mean that, you know, I'm going to go all the way at the top. You have to be realistic in your goals as well. Everybody wants to go and play at the top level in the best teams, but it's not realistic for everyone. So I think once you start finding out that that's the case and that's reality, I think it makes it a lot easier. It's obviously, if you tell a kid at 16 they're going to be professional, then their head straight away goes to the top level. Like, that's where they want to aspire to be. There's nothing wrong with that. Why would you not want to be? But for most people, it's not realistic. And I think once you start to get your head around that idea that there's a very small chance that you can get to that level, I think it makes it a lot easier with just being happy with progressing slow, because it's not how many players get to progress from here to here, you know. Only very rare cases. You look at someone like Mbappe, you know, he was 19 and he was one of the biggest transfers ever. It's such a small pool of players that get that opportunity. And that's one thing and it used to almost make me upset, because when you're a kid, you want to be the best in the world. You want to win the World Cup. You want to win the Champions League. You want to play for your national team. And when I started to slowly realise that just because I was a professional when I was young didn't mean that I was going to that level. Of course, you're almost naive when you're that age. And once you start to realise that that's not the case, it gets to the point where you're like, what's the point? But then you have to realise that you're still doing what you love doing, and you're still doing it at a good level. It's just not the unrealistic level of playing, Champions League week in, week out, or Premier League week in, week out. Obviously, something that kind of kept that little spark there was the chance to go down to a Premier League club like Everton, and then straight away, you realise who you're playing with, and these players, they've had the opportunity from 4 or 5 to become the best players that they could be. Whereas, especially in Scotland, a lot of players, unless you make it when you're young to the Rangers and Celtic, you might not have as many opportunities to be the best player you can be. So that's where the sacrifices come in. Can you sacrifice enough outside of football to make sure that you can be the best player that you can be? And I think that's something that's difficult, like asking 18, 19-year-olds back home to not go to their friend's house for a party when everybody at school and all your friends group's going to be there. I've been in that position, and people would always say, like, why? It's just football. Like, you can play on the Saturday, no problem. And it's like, well, it's something that I'm going to sacrifice going to that party so that I can have a good game tomorrow. And hopefully, there's always somebody watching. And it did work out for me in the end, because I started to progress slowly up the leagues. And then I don't think if I didn't make those sacrifices, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have had the chance to impress somebody over here. And like I said, I think this is one of the best things I've done, is coming over here and starting a new chapter in my life, almost.
I love that, and it kind of goes into my next thought here is, you talk about how great the experience that you've had by getting out of your comfort zone, right? Leaving home, right? In a sense, you're betting on yourself. Can you take us through that mindset of what it's like, and the general and honest fears that you have of, I'm comfortable here, and this unknown, the fear of the unknown, if you will, because I went through it as an American going abroad to Belgium. I was scared as could be. I lived in Florida my entire life, get an opportunity to go abroad, and I'll be honest with you, for lack of a better term, I was shitting myself. But I still I look back on it, and it's like one of the best things that you could possibly do in this life is not only betting on yourself, but getting out of your comfort zone. So as a human being, like, can you kind of just shed some light on, how has your personality changed? How has your outlook, your view on life, your view on there's things in general changed for the better, betting on yourself?
I think just, opening your mind up to new ideas, and realising that not everything's like it is back home, whether it's positively or negatively. But I feel like it's good to, I'd recommend it to anybody, go out your comfort zone, because I was someone who was more than comfortable staying in my comfort zone, wouldn't really venture too far away from home. And the opportunity came, and it really did. I did have to think about it for a long time. Obviously, you've got the basic fact that my family stays at home. I've got a girlfriend back home, my brother, all my friends, and I love spending time with all them. But I still thought I was young enough where I can go and do this and not regret it. If I came out here and I didn't enjoy it, okay, at least I tried it, and it was on me as well. That's the main thing I thought was, if it's going to be on me, then I can accept that. But I don't want me not doing it for unselfish reasons. I think at some stage in your life, you have to just go, okay, I'm going to bet on myself and see how this goes. And I knew the football side of it would take care of itself in terms of, I'll fit into a team or through football. You know, that's something that I don't need to really worry about necessarily, because that's, like you say, we all speak the same language when you're playing football. But in terms of as a person, I remember sitting on the flight and I was just like, okay, I've never done this before. I've never even been in the airport by myself. I never went on a flight by myself. So I never even been in the States as well. So it's not like I'm going somewhere that I know where I'm going.
So come over the other side of this world.
Yeah. I think it really set in when I got to Amsterdam airport and I realised how big the place was, and I had no idea where I was going, and I didn't have anybody to speak to. I was just like, okay, there's the first task, just find out where the plane is.
Greg wandering the airport.
Yeah, so I had all these suitcases as well, and I was just like, okay, this is the start of it. But it sounds strange, but that was the first small challenge I had to deal with that I hadn't been challenged with before. And after I'd done that, you know, it's like in football, you play your first pass, you complete your first pass, you get a little bit of confidence. And after that, I was like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, this is going to be fine. And I remember just sitting on the flight to Atlanta, watching the map getting closer and closer. And I was like, okay, this is actually happening now. Like, I can't really go back. So like I said, there's a lot of excitement, but there was a lot of fear as well. You know, I didn't know how this was going to plan out in 3 months' time, or maybe in a year's time. I don't know what path it's going to lead me down. But that's one thing I enjoyed about it, because most of my life had been up until that point. You know, I kind of knew roughly where it was going to go. Whether it was, okay, you don't make it in the SPL back home, you can drop down the league. Or if you do make it, then you can go somewhere else. Like, I knew the options that were there. And I had the comfort at home as well. So I think coming over here and not knowing where this could go, and not having the comfort at home, not having people around me that, you know, were family or close friends, I think that's something that really started to get into my head. But I felt like if I'm going to make the most of it, I just have to ignore all those thoughts, go in 100%, and just see where it goes. And like I said, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. At least I've tried it. You know, I'd hate to wake up in 15, 20 years' time back home and think, why did I never take that opportunity? You know, and even now I could well be back home when I'm that age now, but I know that I can look back on it and think, I'm really glad I've done that. Like, that was an experience in my life that I think has shaped me as a person and helped me grow as a person. And I think that's why I would recommend it to people. I'm not saying that everybody back home, if it doesn't work out the first time, just move continent and try and start again. That's not what I'm saying. But I think if you're, you know, you maybe get in your own head a little bit too much, or you find the pressures of playing back home too much, try somewhere else. I mean, the pressures are still there, of course. I have the pressure to perform week in, week out, day in, day out. But I feel like I'm in a place here where I feel more comfortable, so I can deal with the pressures a lot better. And like I said, meet Alex on the first day, Stephen on the first day, and straight away I felt like there was a connection there. So almost like Alex said, there was a little bit of home there. And that was somewhere I could touch bases with, people that I could touch bases with. So I almost felt straight away, okay, I'm not alone. Like, I'm going to be on this journey with other people, and I'll meet other people. But ultimately it's down to me to, you know, come out my shell and be brave enough and strong enough to just go and accept whatever challenge is going to be ahead and just try and meet it face on and see how I could deal with it. It's something that, you know, I had a safe life back home. I didn't really have any problems. I didn't have anything on a day-to-day basis that would challenge me to a certain extent, apart from football. And moving over here, you know, I knew that I was going to encounter different things. It's a different way of life over here compared to back home. Different culture as well, and it's a culture that I've enjoyed more than I ever imagined I could. And that's why I keep saying, like, I'm so glad I did make that step to come over here, and see where it would go from there.
Well, I think, like, I definitely noticed this in my career as well. Like, it's amazing what a change of scenery can do.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, playing, even if it's across the pond,
yeah,
you know, it could be Scotland to Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's quite a big difference. For me, it was even, you know, from San Francisco Bay Area to Portland.
Yeah.
You know, I was enjoying my football in San Francisco. I got to Portland. I was in a great setup, you know, with the Timbers and playing with Timbers too. And I think, you know, I really enjoyed being there, but I wasn't enjoying my football as much.
Yeah.
I think it was just a lot different than what I had been used to. And I think, you know, sometimes you need to bet on yourself. And I was out of contract in Portland afterwards. I had an opportunity to come here. I knew nothing about Tennessee or Chattanooga for that much. And even since I've been here, I've loved it. I think I've found a little bit of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Like you have, albeit not quite so far traveled.
Yeah. I think the one moment where I thought I'd made a mistake was when I got out the airport in Chattanooga, and I felt like I got hit by a truck because of how hot it was and how humid it was. And I thought, as a Scottish lad, this is not for me. I remember the first training session, 10 minutes in, soaked in sweat, struggling to breathe. I was like, I've made a mistake. But then you get used to it and you're just like, you know what, this is actually pretty good.
That's home for Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I'm born and raised Floridian, so I love the humidity. You know, looking, you know, down the road 15, 20 years, right? And personally, it's, you know, what if it's a hell of a motivational thought, right? Because you don't want to get to that point and say, oh, I wish, or I should have, or I could have. I think oh well is much better than what if, from a motivational standpoint. Could you just speak on like what motivates you at your age right now and your career trajectory? What is something that you rely on from a motivational standpoint that pushes you through?
I think for me, the two main ones are, you know, I want to be in a position where I can provide for my future family, and I also want to provide for my family that I have around me now. I think that's always been something I have to thank my mum and dad for, and my brother especially. We always grew up, we were always a close family. You know, I had friends at school who had brothers that, you know, they openly said they didn't like, and to me that was so strange. You know, my brother's been my best friend since I could remember. I think the age gap helped. It's about 6.5 years, so anything that he experienced, he kind of told me how not to do it. Any mistakes he made, you know, he helped me steer me away from those. And I used to play football with him every single day, and it was always a competition. I always wanted to be better than him, but for a long time, I mean, he still is quicker and stronger than me, but I think he's lost a bit of technical ability that he used to have. But I remember being younger, and it was just too easy for him, and it frustrated me. I didn't want to be beat off him. You know, you have that sibling rivalry. Even with my dad and my mum, massive football fans. My dad played football for years. So did my brother. He had a bad ACL injury, which meant that he had to stop playing football at the level he was playing at. He was good in school. He's a very smart guy. Managed to get a good job for himself. And he's back playing kind of local football, which is enough for him now because, you know, he enjoys it and that's what he wants to do. So in terms of that, you know, I want to be secure in my life, but also want to help provide and help out family and give back what they gave me. You know, my dad used to drive 4 days a week up and down the country, taking me to practice, taking me to games. And I mean, I can't thank him enough for that. You know, I wouldn't be anywhere without that. My mum staying up late after training to cook me dinner for when I came home, so I didn't have to go to bed hungry, and then make my breakfast so I could go to school in the morning. And also, I just, you know, I want to be the best that I can be in terms of if I can go to the highest level, I want to get there. And if I don't get to where I should have been, I'll take the blame. I don't want to rely on anyone else. I don't want to have the ability to blame someone else for me not getting to where I want to be. I need to take ownership of that. And I think I'd say one of my biggest motivations would be regret. You know, I don't want to get to the end of my career and have a lot of regret. I think everybody will have regrets to a certain point, but I don't want to have that one main regret where I look back and think, if I didn't do that, or if I did do that, where would I be now? I think that's something that almost scares you in a way. You don't want to be retired from soccer or football and think and regret anything that you've done on that kind of scale. That there's going to be moments in everyone's career, and maybe I've already had my moment where it could have took you to the top or close to your best, and I don't think it'll be till after when you look back and think maybe that was the moment that I didn't make the best decision. But that's, like I said, that's part of football. You're going to there's so many opportunities throughout seasons where you have one good game, somebody sees you, and then you're going to get a good move. Or you have a bad game that day, they maybe report back and think, I didn't think he was that great. That can stop you, maybe getting to that next level. So yeah, I think regret is probably my biggest self-motivation in terms of how I want to play out my career. Like I said, I really don't want to get to that retiring age and be somewhere that I never thought I'd be because I didn't maybe take a risk or I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And obviously another big one for me is just, family. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, and I want to give back as much as I can to them. I want to provide for my future family as well. That's something that, at my age, you have to start thinking about. It's not just going to be all about me or, my girlfriend or my mum and dad or my brother. It's going to be my kids and what position I put them in. So yeah, I think that's probably the two biggest ones for me.
Well, just based on conversations that you and I have had, you obviously still want to be the best, be the best you can be, to the highest level you can be. But I think one thing you mentioned earlier was becoming realistic about where that might be.
Yeah.
I mean, when you were back with St. Johnstone, or when you were on trial with Everton, maybe that was different than where it is now.
Yeah.
And I think you and I have spoken about this just one-on-one, and I know you have aspirations to build your career here in the States and play in the MLS. And I think if you hadn't come over here, you maybe would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
Whereas at that point it was, okay, getting top flight in Scotland in the SPL, if you can make a move to England or whatnot. So I think having that adaptability, and just being able to, like I said, find that why, just is what's massive to keep you going.
I think a lot of players have that one end goal that it could be achievable, but when something happens that means that might no longer be an option, they don't really have a plan B.
Absolutely.
Like you said, I would probably never have been in a position where I thought, I'm going to try and go and play in the MLS, because I had options back home to, like you say, I want to get to the top flight in Scotland, and then I want to go and try and play in England. And then when I came over here, I thought, well, why not shoot for the stars? I'm over here. I made a big step to come over and can almost change my life in terms of I'm living in a different continent, in a different country, different lifestyle, different culture. Enjoy the ride and try and get to the top as well. Why not use the MLS as a goal? It's not easy, but yeah, I think that's one, like you said, adaptability in terms of your goals is probably one thing that I'd say is very important in football, because there's so many variable factors that can change the course of your career that you might not have in other jobs. There's so many possibilities, and I think that to have one fixed goal is great when you're grown up. You want to go, like I said, everybody wants to go and win the World Cup with their country or go and win the Champions League, and that's brilliant. But as your career progresses, you see what becomes more of a realistic target, and you also realise that target might be the same but in a different place. Play the top flight in England. Okay, that's not going to work. We'll try Scotland. It's not going to work. Try America. And I'm not saying that it tends to be negative, I'd still take the opportunity to go home and play in the top flight than in Scotland or England or whatever. But again, that's down to me. I have to keep making the sacrifices, keep performing well. But right now, in terms of the mindset I'm in, I enjoy where I am just now. So why not make it a goal to go and play in the MLS? So I think, yeah, like you said, adaptability is probably one of the most important factors in that.
Love listening to that, man. We're coming up on a little bit over an hour. One thing that I just personally would like to know, obviously with social media running the world today, would love to hear you plug your personal Instagram. Then I got a question that piggybacks off of that. So where can people reach out to you?
My Instagram is Greg Hurst 97 and my Twitter is Greg Hurst 10.
Okay, perfect. All right. So a little scenario here. I'm up and coming.
Understand it as well.
So yeah, the question I got for you is I'm a aspiring footballer, professional footballer, younger guy, and I hit up Greg Hurst 97 on Instagram. What's one piece of advice that you would give me as a young footballer, that if you were to hear it at a more impressionable age, you would have been able to take on board and say, okay, I could take this gem of information and run with it?
I think the main one for me in terms of what I've experienced would be there is going to be a lot of ups and downs. There's no getting away from that. It's just that's the nature of the business. That's going to happen. I think aside from that, enjoy playing football and enjoy the experience. But just know that there's going to be stages on the road to wherever you end up that are going to be difficult, and just make sure that you're prepared for that. I got knocked, like I said, I got knocked down when I was 14 years old, and I've been in the game for a year. I think that's kind of helped me in a certain way, because I was straight away, I was like, okay, so it's not just going to be plain sailing. But the one that I'd always say is just, it is going to be difficult, but just enjoy it as much as you can. When you start falling out of love with football, it becomes a lot more of a difficult sport. Enjoy it every day you go to training. I think that's one thing that I've maybe taken me too long to do, but every time I turn up to training now, I go with a smile on my face because I'm still doing what I want to do, and it helps you perform better. And I've seen it in my own performances. I'm starting to perform better the more happier I am going into training and going into games. You feel more relaxed. So I think, yeah, definitely. If I was to speak to myself at a younger age, or anybody that did want to get in touch, that's one thing where I'd start. It's not all going to be easy. You are going to get knocked back. You're going to feel like maybe it's not what you want to do. And I've certainly felt like that a few times. But it's just about picking yourself back up and, going again. I think people, if you'll know yourself if you have the drive or the desire to keep going. And that's something that I don't think you'll get very far in the game if you don't have that personal determination or drive, because there's so many ups and downs that you have to just have that within yourself to get through them. So that for me, that would be the best advice I could give myself if I was to speak to them at 13, 14 years old.
I love that. I love that. Alex, any more from you?
I think just closing out. I mean, look, it sounds like at 23, you've already been through highs and lows of your career. Yeah. I mean, look, we're all on a similar journey, trying to be the best footballers that we could be, keep restructuring and find our why. It's all part of the battle, I think.
Yeah.
You seem to have had a decent handle on it so far. You're starting to, you're flying for us. So,
yeah,
I mean, I think you got something figured out right now.
Yeah.
But, I just appreciate you sharing, and think, look, at the end of the day, the reason Cody and I have wanted to put this project together, and we've been talking about it for a little while now, is just imparting wisdom on other players out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to note that it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
You said it from the start. It's not going to be easy. It's not something that's plain sailing, and I think that's something that can be addressed to people that aren't in our position, or aren't in our line of work. Playing a professional sport isn't just smooth sailing the whole time. It's not just what you see on TV. And so for us to normalize the fact that there's a lot of things that guys are going through is, and I think that's our goal, and to help people and players and just people in general understand that there are ways to get through the ups and downs and the peaks and valleys aren't as high and low as they need to be.
I think that's probably why I've emphasised that so much, that it's not easy, is because for people from the outside looking in, they might just think, how many times do you hear it? His heart's not in the game anymore, or, he just doesn't look up for it. I think you have to realise that as players, no matter what level you're going through or you're playing at, you still have an outside world to live in. You still have the everyday problems that everyone else deals with. Just because you're in a position where you're on the television for an hour and a half on a Saturday, or you're in a position where you're a professional athlete 7 days a week, doesn't mean that you don't get affected by those things. And it's something that Alex knows as well. I've suffered from being in my own head too much a lot of the time through football. So I think I can see why it's difficult for people outside of football to understand why that might be the case, but it's just to let people know that we do struggle as much as anybody else. Just because we're doing the dream job or the job that we wanted to do as a kid. Of course, I'm so thankful for that, and I'm appreciative to everything that's gone into that. You've worked hard to get to that level and get to the stage in your career, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it's easy. Like I said, you do have the everyday challenges that everyone else has, and I think that's important to stress to other players as well, who maybe feel that they don't understand why they're feeling a certain way. It's like you still have the problems of everyday life. Just because you're doing what you want to do and people see you as a role model, doesn't mean you can't feel like that. So I think that's probably why I emphasised more on it's not easy. You have so many ups and downs. But yeah.
No, thanks for sharing, man. Appreciate you being on.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, Greg, I can't thank you enough, man. Obviously, I appreciate, and Alex does as well, your ability to be candid with us, because this is inevitably going to help a lot of people. And that's why Alex and I got involved with this, is we want to shed light on the reality rather than the perception, because that gets, from time to time, that gets skewed. So I can't thank you enough, man. We haven't, officially met, but look, you've gained a fan in myself. So for that, I am grateful, and I'm wishing you both nothing but health and success.
Thanks very much. It's something that when Alex brought it up to me, I was definitely keen to do. It's a good platform to kind of, whether it helps one person, it helps enough people for me. You know what I mean? So, but I just like to say thank you as well for giving me that platform to come on and speak. Just as much as I hope it helps other people, it's helped me as well. It's given me the opportunity to speak about how I feel and my thoughts with people that are in the same position as me. So yeah, it's brilliant.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Well, again, thank you, and wishing you nothing but the best this season, and then in the future.
Thanks
and
very much.
What was it again? Instagram at Greg Hurst 97, Twitter at Greg Hurst 10.
I should probably just keep them both the same.
It might make it easier. What, 97 your birth year and 10 the number you want to wear, or what?
That's not fun.
It's okay. It's all right.
And we'll put all that in the description.
Yeah, we'll get it up there for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
No worries. We can just edit this stuff out on the back end.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Okay. Cool. Kick this shit off.